my eyes, but I don't know why you're over me, still deep in my memory, and I'll never forget the time that we had.
Hi Tom, thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm a little bit harassed. I'm kind of very busy. I'm fine. I'm happy, but we're talking on Tuesday. We were supposed to talk last night, and I gigged Thursday, Friday. I did 2 gigs on Saturday, gig on Sunday with about 700 miles worth of traveling, and so I missed Father's Day on Sunday, and I have 3 grown-up daughters from a first marriage, and I have 2 little girls from a second marriage. And it was deputised that my girls should come round on Monday night. So I'm afraid I was supposed to do this podcast with you, and I completely forgot about it because we were in our garden breaking an old garden table, so I have to buy a new one and making homemade pieces. I'm really sorry, and I don't normally do that, but it's been a very busy week. Yeah.
No, I understand. It's totally fine. People don't see that side of touring actually with band members, like how they miss out on, like you say, Father's Day and stuff like that.
I think you're very privileged if you can work in any of the arts. I think you can do anything that's expressive or working in the arts is a privilege, and hopefully, there's a thing about. But yes, the answer is yes. But I mean, there's a contra-wise to that as well, which is sometimes along the way you meet people who've given up playing music or doing an art form because their partner didn't support it. And if your partner doesn't support it, if you're talented at it and your partner doesn't support it, unless you sorry, there's a cat in the background. There's a cat lying on. I've just found secreted on a table over there, and it was a little bit of a Doctor Who moment because it was a bit like Alien. It uncurled itself. Yeah, if you've got a partner and you're good at what you do and they don't support what you're doing, you're either going to have to stop doing what you're doing, or you're going to have to put up with them. Because if you have a case, playing an art-based thing, you have to have a partner who understands it. I do. My wife Kelly is extremely supportive of what I do.
I saw you've got an album coming out in September. What can you tell us about that?
The album is called The Grand Mal. The Grand Mal is an epileptic fit. I'm not making light of people who have epileptic fits. I mean, I don't suffer from them, and I know they're serious. But the idea of the name is that it was an album written during the lockdown. So the whole idea is to kind of the world had an epileptic fit and sort of thing, or and also the Grand Mal is a bit of a pun because it sounds like the best retail space in North America, doesn't it? The Grand Mal. It's a little bit of a pun. There's basically 11 songs that I wrote during lockdown in this room actually, and so I started recording it. I've done about 6 albums with this guy called Gary Hadfield, and he works in a studio called Blueprint in Salford and Elbow, work out of there, and. I mean, a lot of people have recorded in there. Snoop Dogg's recorded in there. Damon Albarn's recorded in there, and I've recorded in there. So, but I came out. I was doing some guitar on the album about 2 years ago, and I went out to go to the toilet and Elbow rehearsing for a BBC program. I was pretty impressed with that. Really, go out to the hall and the Elbow rehearsing. And so I recorded this album, but it was quite a struggle really because, like a lot of people. I've had a very privileged sort of upbringing. I've had very, like my parents were quite well off. I'm not going to make out we had a dead rough upbringing because it's just not true. But really, the lockdown for a lot of people was very difficult. And I went from playing maybe 130 shows a year to not playing at all, like 18 months. And really lucky, we've got a lovely house, and me and Kelly got a garden, and we could spend time. I could spend time sort of helping educate the kids. They were doing stuff. They were doing kind of scouts online. One of my daughters was doing drama. They were also doing schoolwork and piano lessons. So we had quite a good lockdown, and actually in a way it was quite good. But I think, like a lot of people, had quite a few mental problems, and after I think I had a bit of a breakdown, really, which I think a lot of people did. It also made me grow up. So the album is sort of about breaking down and growing up.
Yeah, it was a tough time for a lot of people, so I'm sure people will resonate with that album in that time.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we might be able to find some tracks for you to play, or something, or at least one track. I mean, it's It's on Bandcamp at the moment. So if you kind of Google Tom Hingley, the words new and then memorabilia and Bandcamp, it comes up. So you can, there's a very limited number of vinyl and a very limited number of CDs. It's really, my friend Anthony did the artwork for it. It's a very beautiful album. The artwork is really, was pressed in, I think it's Middlesbrough. This company called Press Play, which was set up in the UK to press records up, and they're doing a lot of records here. And it's really good. I mean, the album was, well, I mean, I would say that, but the album is fantastic. But the actual sort of the way it looks is very good. But what we decided to do was we decided not to put any of the lyrics on the CD booklet or in the vinyl. So it's just a QR code on the middle of the record or in the middle of the CD, and you can go to a microsite and get all the lyrics there. So we wanted it to sort of be a bit minimalist. A lot of records are just thrown together. So we wanted it to sort of look aesthetically beautiful, because you can have a really great record with a rubbish cover, and you can have a really good cover on a rubbish record, but usually records that are formulated and thought through have a beautiful cover as well as, you know, as well as being a good record.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just want to go back to the start. You learned how to sing through a church choir. Did you have any?
Yeah.
Did you want to be a singer before that, or did it just come naturally through doing that?
I wanted to be Tom Jones, to be honest. I mean, like in the 70s, I mean, I was born in 1965. The sort of singers who were really important to me, or the kind of music that I was exposed to as a young chap that was important to me, was stuff like Tom Jones. There's an incredibly camp program on the radio called Sing Something Simple, which was like someone Samson singers. It's a very, very camp program, you know. But yeah, and I like the Ink Spots as well. We were like an old band. I liked. There's a lot of things I didn't understand, but I'll come on to that. I think I like the Beatles, obviously, and I mean the hymns in the church is quite. It's the best acoustics you're ever going to get is in a church. All them sort of vaulted sort of stone arches, and the lyrics are quite good. I'm not religious at all, but I think the lyrics are quite good in hymns, and I think a lot of the tunes are quite good in hymns. And yeah, so I like Tom Jones, and I'm trying to think. I mean, God, who else? I mean, there's a lot of bands you only realise afterwards. Kind of when I got into sort of punk years, kind of them and hated them. But actually, they're really good. Like ELO, obviously, really good. Although it kind of pains me to say it, you know. And I mean, ABBA were really good, but quite funny because what ABBA seemed to do, there's this sort of psychosexual drama. So I'm getting a little bit far away from the singing, but ABBA looked at the psychosexual drama that was going on in Fleetwood Mac. They kind of put that in their videos. They kind of put that. I'm not saying whether it's true or not true. They kind of took that into band psychosexual drama and put it into their videos. And then they kind of learned from the way that Fleetwood Mac sort of scandalised themselves, dreamers. So yeah, I also really like Dr. Feelgood later on. They were like a big influence in Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. I quite like Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. It's a bit like Cliff Richard's single Move It. Like a lot of people think Cliff Richard's a total joke, but actually Move It is a great British rock and roll single. I quite like these British rock and roll bands who were around before the Beatles. That's not to slag off the Beatles, but and I really with rock and roll, I like some of the bands who were around before the Beatles, like Bobby Becker and Lee Dorsey, and you know, and Chuck Berry probably. I think with rock and roll, you know, the Isley Brothers. I think the original exponents of it. Look, obviously, Christ, the Beatles were amazing, you know, but rock and roll is better off done by the original people doing it. I think probably.
Yeah, the Beatles kind of took what had come before and took it to that next level, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you listen to Twisted Shout by the Beatles. I mean, that was the parents. Like the early 60s, hear these guys screaming, you know, that would have been much more shocking than the Sex Pistols. Much more shocking than, you know, what they called, you know, people who did that. God, I'm just having a bad, you know, people did Five Star, so I'm just having a bad moment, you know, just got very tired. Yeah, I mean, like you take these bands like the Prodigy, you know, or punk bands or whatever. I mean, that Twisted Shout, I mean, that really would have really upset a lot of people. There's nothing better in music than upsetting a lot of people.
We
can't hear it now. We can't hear it now in realise what outrage it's been when you hear John Lennon. You know, we were listening to it in the car the other day on the way back from the gig. It's like, there's not that many times he could have done that many takes on that vocal. He just wouldn't have had a voice. I mean, John Lennon, best rock and roll voice ever, but he couldn't have done that take more than 3 times in one session. He had no voice left.
Yeah, exactly.
That's to commend it. That's not
Oh
so
yeah,
bad. Saying it's
no,
good.
definitely. Yeah. Another thing that interested me from your early years is you had 6 siblings and they all influenced you musically to some degree.
Yeah, we'll come back to. I mean, unfortunately, I lost 2 brothers last year. I mean, my oldest brother Peter. There is a relevance to this, which I might touch on later. But Peter was the first person who got into music, and he was quite into pop rock. He was quite into Bowie and stuff like that in the 70s. And he played guitar, so he was influential. And my second brother Richard wasn't musical. Third oldest brother Martin was musical, still is musical. He was in a sort of bedroom punk band in Oxfordshire in 1976. Then my fourth oldest brother Andrew was in the same punk band in 1976. My sister Helen played cello, but we were in a rubbish punk band in 1976. I was a rubbish bedroom punk band in 1976. So we were quite into all those bands. I mean, we used to record little rubbish albums using like a reel-to-reel machine and a cassette machine and dubbing stuff in, which I'm sure lots of people did, or maybe no one did it, but it's never left me that magic of just recording something and being able to overdub something. I mean, whenever you get like bands and like they do 1 album or they do 5 albums and then they get bored being in studio, I've never lost that magic, that idea of magic of recording one thing over the top of another. And I'm quite experienced at recording. And even when I joined Inspirals in 1989, we started recording singles. I mean, obviously they were a fantastic band before I joined them, whatever. But I'd say let's put some backwards guitar on it. Now that doesn't sound very revolutionary, but they hadn't done that on the records before I came. Or I'd say, this is really technical stuff. You can do a thing where you use a gated reverb to open and close. You can use MIDI triggers to get to open and close sounds using gated reverb. So you can chop up guitar like the Talking Heads did it a lot. So when we did like Commercial Rain, I said, why don't we use like a gated when we did the re-recording of it, which I mean, Clint was massively experienced at recording bands and had a lockup. But having said that, being in a studio where you're spending hundreds of pounds every day, I did have a lot of our production ideas, which we did use. I mean, we all did, but I did, because we'd been doing stupid little recordings back in the 70s, and that magic of being able to record something, even if it's just on a mobile phone. There's no, the songs on this new album, the Grand Mal, were originally recorded on a mobile phone.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, because things were really simple recording devices like your mono cassette recorder or your mono your stereo cassette recorder. It's got a thing called ALC in it, which is like it's a kind of compressor. It compresses all the sounds and makes it all even. So actually, if you record a load of guitar on a mobile phone or on like some old cassette machine, it'll sound really good because it compresses it all. And actually, it's really difficult to make it sound that good in a studio. But anyway, I'm getting too technical here. It's not necessarily that interesting, really.
Another thing that interested me is you used to busk in Germany when you lived over there. Did that and performing in a choir help you play live when you had the band Too Much Texas and then Inspirals and so on?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with busking is, well, I don't want to talk in a negative way about the way that some people busk, but to me, for me, you walk up and down Market Street in Manchester and people busk and they have backing tracks or they have electric stuff and that's down to them. To me, that's not right, really. You should be, if you're playing with a guitar, you should, I mean, for me, you should be able to stand there with a guitar and just play, I think. And I'm a very confident singer. I mean, there's probably various things I could have been good at, but music was just so easy. It just allowed me to be incredibly lazy and just do music. I could have done a number of other things. I probably could have been an actor. But music just came too easy, and I'm quite lazy in some ways. There's a load of things I could have done, but I mean, I'm a composer and a singer and a musician and a business person, I suppose, and an artist. But busking, I didn't really play covers. I used to play a lot of rock and roll, which I'd never really learned to play properly, which I still haven't learned to play properly even now. But and the thing is, if you've got, it really teaches you how to communicate with an audience. There's a whole psychology. If you, I mean, let's use the phrase "in my day." You know, if you're going to put if you're going to put like a pot out for people to put money in when you start, put about £2 in it to start off with. Don't put £7 in it. What do you mean nowadays with you know, with the way the economy's going, we're probably talking £200 rather than, I'm just joking. But you know, you put some money in it of different denominations because people are more likely to put money in it. If you're busking in, you know, you're busking the Conversenham in Berlin, probably try and pay attention to the Turkish kids because they'll take the large coins out while you're not looking, you know, just because they're having a joke, not because or because they're Turkish, just having a laugh, you know. So there's a whole side, you know, with busking. I used to busk in Wittenberg flats in Berlin before the wall came down, and the Cardiff E was a sort of, I don't think it's there anymore, but it was like the Harrods, and it survived the bombing, Second World War. 50% of the buildings were all bombed out in Berlin in the Second World War. So I used to busk outside the Cardiff E and Wittenberg flats. And I used to go in, when I broke a string, I used to go in and buy string. But after about 3 weeks, they found out, because I've got a very, very loud voice, which my children don't always approve of. But and after a while, they started refusing to sell me strings because they didn't like me singing it. So what happened then was I had to send punters in to go these strings. And then sometimes I wouldn't sell the punters, you'd have to get new people to go in to buy strings. So I mean, you are good if you must be good if you're having to do that. Because I think also at the risk of saying this sounds a bit not very good, but you know, as a young lad, I was quite nice looking, and I think that's important in music. It doesn't matter if you're in I don't know, a death metal band or some kind of arty farty band. I mean, it doesn't always matter, but I think if you're right looking, it helps.
Well, you were born down south, but then later on you moved up to Manchester. What was it that attracted you to Manchester?
I wanted to get away from my parents. I was the youngest of seven. I mean, my dad was 45 when I was born. She was more like a grandparent than a parent. Having said that, my eldest daughter, my youngest daughter, is 7. She was born 7 years ago. That means that she was born when I was 50. So I'm older now than my dad was. But I wanted to go away from my parents because I was the youngest, and I just wanted to go somewhere I'd be independent. Also, I thought it'd be easier to get into music. Smaller pool, it'd be a smaller pool. I mean, look, Manchester is such a fantastic, I mean, the North is such a fantastic artistic place. I thought it might be a smaller pool of places to work, be easier to work. It was very post-industrial. It had been laid waste by Margaret Thatcher, had been laid waste by, you know, how tired Britain got winning, you know, won the Second World War and then lost the peace, didn't it? You know, that's the problem. So it was for, you know, we didn't have the internet then, which was a really good thing because the internet, I increasingly think the internet is actually a really bad thing in a lot of instances. And I think that London, as is now, as was then, controlled a lot of what was going on, and Manchester was just, you know, a couple of hours up the road, which meant that you could develop your own scene and it wouldn't get stolen and then ruined in hours, which is what happens now with the internet. It's much harder to. So it was like, it wasn't a backwater, but it was a place where if you were good, you'd get found quite quickly, which I don't think happened in London necessarily. So it was almost a bit forgotten because of Margaret Thatcher. So it kind of had its own gravity, its own direction.
Yeah.
Well, I was also doing an English degree at the Poly, but I wanted to go to a big industrial city because you're more likely to build be success. And the band I was with moved up there. With the band I played in a band with Gordon and Raymond, and they moved up to Manchester. But we didn't. I got, you know, they didn't actually ask me to join the band for a year. So I don't know. I mean, I was probably too busy being a loner and going out to freshest nights and completely failing to meet anyone there. I would sound like Morrissey living a little bed sit in Chiltern, go out in the busybody drawer, so notes in the drawer saying, "Stop going through my door."
Did you own Too Much Texas? When did that band come about? Was that the one that moved up?
Well, we used to be in band. We used to be in bands and sort of in sort of 1982. We were in a band called Raise the Dust, and we did a couple of gigs like in the Rock Garden. And I think we played with David Allman in the Rock Garden really early when he was like probably in 82 or 83. He used to have to sell tickets to get this gig in London, but we just used to play around Oxfordshire and Abingdon and a couple of gigs in London. But then we moved up to Manchester and we formed this band Too Much Texas, and we used to rehearse in the Boardwalk, and we lived in Hume, and we did a flexi disc on Debris, which was this magazine that Dave Haslam ran, who's the writer now, and we got played on John Peel because there were two songs on the disc, Too Much Texas. One was by a band called Soil, the other one by us, and the flexi disc wouldn't play their song, so Peel just played the other song, and we got a Peel session. But this is the thing about how the internet's actually made things maybe more difficult, because somehow we got hold of the phone number in Colonial House, which is where Peel used to do a show from. Just rang him up and he answered the phone. He said, "Can we do a Peel session?" I said, "Yes." Couldn't do that now. Completely impossible now. It's actually got harder to do things, I think. I mean, you can become a viral success on the I'm sure, but I think in some ways it's actually made getting through things harder, I think. Because it's more noise, it's more competition. So we supported New Order because we used to work at the Hacienda. We used to collect glasses at the Hacienda, and so we supported New Order. We supported at the Hacienda. We supported the House of Love, the Beloved, the Pastels, the Boardwalk. So we must have been quite good, because I don't think we would have done that. And yeah, so that was Too Much Texas.
What was it like working at Hacienda?
It was great because you basically walk around the club and get eyed up by women all walking around the club, which is quite good getting paid for that. It was sort of like, that sounds really, I know that sounds really conceited, but it was quite a good job, really. I used to go and bottle up on a Saturday morning and they'd pay you like the bottles like back in the bar, and they pay 15 quid, which was a fortune. And I used to sing Man of the World by Fleetwood Mac, and the guy you worked there said, "Yeah, don't give up the day job, will you?"
Really?
I was quite a good singer. But I worked there, and one day went in, the safe had been robbed and they'd lost like 2 days taking £50,000. And even then, I mean, I'm a cynical fellow. I was probably 19 or 20. It took me like a third or a second to work out that it was the cleaners who robbed it. It's just so obvious, like so stupid. It's just so obvious. It's the cleaners. Somebody's got the keys in it. It's going to be someone's got the keys. I'm a posh boy from down south. I'm not exactly, one of the craze. It's like it's the cleaners in it. Like I learned a couple of things from Hacienda when we played at Ulu, I think, in London. There was only us and one security guy who actually was out of a band who were a good deal less successful than we were at that time. So they probably had a bit of a grudge against us. And Clint lost his wallet. And I said, "Clint," "you've lost your wallet?" He said, "Yeah." And there was no one else in the place. I said, "Go through the toilets and see if one was blocked." And we did. And within about 30 seconds, we found that someone had robbed all the stuff out of his wallet and stuck it down the toilet, because that's an old, this is Ely in London. I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm like quite a posh person, but I've bussed on the street and I've got a bit of street. I'm a bit aware of things. I'm aware because I've stood on it. I've bussed on the street and people have abused me and all that. A lot of people have been nice to me or whatever, but I've got a kind of understanding of what's going on.
Yeah.
Which has sometimes helped me and sometimes hasn't helped me. But, so work at the Hacienda was great, really great music. What I always say about the Hacienda is various people have written about it, and some of the people who've written about it weren't there. Not in the early days, maybe later on, post rave when the Manchester thing started, but earlier on, in the 84, 85, they weren't there. There were people who were there, but a lot of people commenting that weren't there. And what they always say is it was like this indie club. It was actually a gay club, and that was really important to Hacienda, because until later on, where people got shot in the queue and all that lot, it was like a gay club, which meant that actually people weren't really that aggressive and they played really good music. And I don't think you can really avoid that in a description of the Hacienda. I think it's misreading of it. I think it's a recreating of it. And if you like good music and you're having a good time, if you find that a problem, I think you're probably in the wrong place, really.
Yeah.
It was quite now we hope we embrace people with more diversity, and that area, that space there did allow people with more diversity embrace, which I think is an important thing. If like if you're into music or you're into the arts and you don't like people who aren't straight, I think you probably just go do something else because
Yeah, definitely.
it's very difficult to find many people who don't think differently and don't live.
Too Much Texas actually supported Inspiral Carpets. What was that gig like?
Inspiral Carpets were great. They're sort of garage band, sort of very combination of being good fun, musically very good, and sort of, I mean this in a great way, could sort of affect you very emotionally in a sort of strong way, but also quite funny. And all those things all thrown together, that sort of sense of humour that was always in it. I think we were good. I think they liked us because Inspiral Carpets were really good at that time with Steve and Swifty and stuff. But I think we were good, but we were good in a different way. We were a bit more sort of art school. I think we were a bit more like, we're sort of more left brain, more kind of, a bit more art school. I mean, like I listened to, we did a compilation record about 20 years ago called Juvenilia, and it was just a compilation of different recordings we did. And the song, I think the lyrics are really good. They're quite funny and quite arty. There's a song in it called Anchor, because like my forefathers were in Dudley, Hingleys were blacksmiths, and then there were chain makers, and they made like the Hingley family were like a lot of them became people who worked in iron, steel works, and they had the patent. The Hingleys had like the patent for the Merchant Navy anchor. So between 1870 and 1905, they made Merchant Navy anchors. So if it goes to the bottom of the Atlantic or for the Titanic, there'll be a large anchor attached to it that says Hingley Netherton, because the Hingley family had the Netherton works. It's quite a big family, and once they made it in that, a lot of them went off and became Wesleyans, they became Methodists, sort of teetotalers. Although they were probably actually really quite bad people, because there's nothing like people to tell other people not to drink and not to do stuff. You usually find out they're actually the worst of the lot, really. But that's so we did this song called Anchor, which is about my family history. But the chorus in it says, "I will be an anchor to steady you through rough and steady seas. The sea is an endless, inexhaustible symbol for human emotion." I mean, I think that's a good lyric, and I wrote that when I was 19. I still think it's a good lyric because it's sort of funny, sort of postmodernist. We're a bit more art, punky, awkward, difficult, arsey sort of band with loud guitars, and I think the lyrics are quite good. There's a song on it called Compact Discs, because that time there was a really good band called Easter House, and one of the guitarists ended up playing in the Smiths. But they were a really good band, but we were insanely jealous of them because they had to deal with rough trade. And and they put their record out on compact discs, and for about 3 weeks we pretended to hate compact discs, although we weren't really jealous of them. But when I was sat in the library at the Poly, there was a copy of Rolling Stone there, and on one page of this Rolling Stone there was a full-page advert for Easter House's debut album, which of course we were really jealous about. But let's go into that. And the next page next to that, the full-page advert, Join the American Army. I found the two things were a bit of a juxtaposition. So the song Compact Disc, it's just basically a dig at Easter House, but basically because we were jealous of them. Easter House were a great band, but the idea of sort of maybe doing an agitprop song, taking the piss out of Easter House, I think it's quite good. It says, all I want for Christmas is my 2 Easter House records and cassette and compact discs. Then it goes into little bits out of Ruby Don't Take Your Love to Town, because obviously that's a song complaining about people getting castrated and messed up in the Vietnam War. It's like, it wasn't me who started up that crazy Asian war. I was proud to do my patriotic chore in the Soviet Republic of Wythenshawe, because Easter House was sort of really quite seriously socialist, and from Wythenshawe. So it's sort of slightly taking the piss. I went to see him play at the Solon Bar, which was a little bar upstairs in Manchester University. They weren't doing this. I'm not saying the band were doing this, but there were basically socialist worker people there, or revolutionary communist people, basically collecting money for people in the IRA, which, I mean, it's an interesting cultural, historical fact that was going on. But so you're talking about a totally different epoch. You're talking about a really different epoch, and I thought, I think I'm going to give them money, not look. I'm not objecting any particular nationalist struggle, but I don't think I'm going to be putting 50p in there. It's just an interesting, so the song is a kind of analysis of that political thing, because the other thing is, let's face it, they were socialists, they were a great band, but you all want to make a living in the music business as well, which is why your music is on a compact disc, so it's slightly deconstructed in that irony, while still wishing to be them. They were a great band. They did a song about the miners' strike called Whistling in the Dark. It's a great song, so I wouldn't try and have a go at East House or whatever, but there was some thought behind it. No one else was doing that. That's kind of awkward. It's a bit art schooly and complicated and awkward and funny, I think.
So then you joined Inspirals. Can you tell us how that came about?
Well, we did a couple of gigs with. But what happened was we did one single with Ugly Man, and Ugly Man was this label run by Guy Lovelady, and he was the first person to put out music by, Black, Wonderful Life, and he was the first person eventually to release stuff by Iron Clute and Elbow. Their first records were on Ugly Man. And we did this one single when we did a Peel session. We didn't really want to do another single. We wanted to find a label to put out a second single. So I found a copy of Inspiral Carpets' first single, 7-inch, in Piccadilly Records, which Plane Crash, which I should have bought. It's probably worth about $3,000 now. It's only about 300 of them or something. And but I just turned it over and I looked at the address of the record company. It's called Playtime Records. It was like a 5-minute walk from there. So I walked from there and I went and met Paula around their label, Playtime, and she decided she'd have us on the label. Well, and was the people who funded the label, who were distributor, went bust about 2 months later. So I'm the only person who left the label twice, because I left it once as a member of Too Much Texas, and I left it again because I joined Inspirals and they left the label. Anyway, so we did 3 gigs supporting them, or 4 gigs supporting them. They'd come a long way at that time. We'd just been a bedroom band at Graham and started off with Stephen Holt. They were called the Furs originally. They just played psychedelic first songs in the cover version. Then that's how the band started. Then it grew into what it was, a psychedelic thing. And Clint, they rehearsed in Clint's rehearsal room, and one day in, I think, 86, Clint just marched his keyboard in and never left. And he never was asked to join the band. He just joined the band. And so what happened was Stephen decided he left in 1988. Because I don't exactly know why. I think he just I don't know. I think he wasn't. I think maybe Clint had come in and Clint had been quite a strong force about what the band ought to be doing, and I think that was a bit of a challenge to him. Maybe I don't want to speak for him. I'm sure he can speak for himself about it. But anyway, so he left with David Swift. So they got Martin in playing bass, and they auditioned 3 singers. Now one was a friend of Martin's, I don't know his name. The other one was John Matthews, who ended up in the High. And the other one was Noel Gallagher. So auditioned those 3 people, but none of them were really right for the band. I mean, Noel went on to so much bigger things. John went on to sing in the High, and he's a great singer, but I don't think he would have been right for the band. So I joined the band, and they never really told me I was in the band. I mean, very different for them because they were northern, a bit more like working class. I was southern and middle class. But I mean, I'd done a lot of. I've been in bands for 10 years at that time. I've been in bands for 13 years at that time. I wasn't. So I joined. I was 24 at that time, but I'd done a lot of gigs. I busked in Berlin and in Manchester and stuff. A very confident singer, quite a good guitarist as well, although I never really did that writing. So I joined the band anyway. But they never told me I was in it. And after about 3 weeks, we were recording Joe. And I was doing the vocal, and they did the talk back through the mic. I said, "What's that noise?" I said, "Oh, you've got bloody lisp." I said, "Oh, it's too late. I'm in the band now." But I've got a lisp on fricatives, which are S's and F's. Excuse me. So I lisp when I say S's and F's, but that actually gives me quite a distinctive sound on my voice. It's quite recognisable. But it wasn't beyond Graham writing the occasional line to possibly make fun of this. There's a line in one song on the Beast Inside, which is gentle sadness, sees silence subside, which I don't think is a serious line. It's a joke, which is fine. I find it's quite funny, So joined the Spirals. We were basically doing the old Rod Stewart thing that he did in the 60s, which is just driving around doing gigs in a transit van, sometimes sitting in the back of the transit van, which I can't believe we did that. Driving to and from gigs. And they they've done a real bedrock of stuff. You know, the band had a following, had been played on Peel, had made a lot of headway. It seemed to be a very credible band, but it could have imploded, that band, really, if they hadn't found another singer. And I'm quite good. I mean, they were clever in business as well as art and music, being funny. I'm quite good at business. I mean, like, I've survived in music as a musician for 37 years. Not the most famous person, not the best person, I'm not the most, I've survived just by being quite street smart, really. And I think I brought that to the band. So, like, they had a manager called Anthony Roggiano. He used to manage a band called the Waterstones, and actually the guitarist Mark ended up in the Charlatans later on. But Anthony was managing them, and what they do is, and this isn't any criticism of them because they're working or living at home or whatever, they'd have a meeting with Anthony once a week to discuss them. And go, no, we can't do that. We have to bring me up with them twice a week, and we have to, like, really. And so I'd come into this thing that was already successful, and I had to tell the mates at Too Much Texas, like, when I auditioned for the band, I rang them up and said, I'm auditioning for Inspiral, so maybe we should knock the band on the head. I believe in being transparent with people, even if it's not really something you want to tell someone. I kind of believe in just being transparent about it, So I got in the band, and very quickly we started having hits. We set up a label with Eastern Bloc. It had a label called Creed, and 808 State went out on it, and Ruthless Lap Assassins went out on it. Obviously, Kermit was in Black Grape later on. So Biting Tongues were on it, which was Graham Massey's other band, and probably someone else, Edward Barton, and probably someone else really famous, who I can't really think of. But anyway, after 2 releases, they had just covered pressing up the records and distributing them. After 2 records, I said to Inspiral, we have to buy ourselves out of this deal, because in 6 months, some major label's going to offer us like 200 grand, and we have to give them half of it to this label because they notionally lent us a grand to press up some singles. That's why I am look, they were all smart. I'm not trying to take credit for anything that Clint or Graham or Craig or Martin did. I'm not, but I'm saying I'm quite good at anticipating things, and I knew that it was going in one direction. So we got out of that deal, set up our own label, and within 3 releases, we got a record deal, so we didn't have to give half the money. Although, I mean, Eastern Bloc might not have done that, but and by the time we put our first album out on Muse, Anthony had already given it away twice by mistake to different people for nothing. Rough trade, or with Rough Trade, you make the product, they distribute it. Rough Trade is sort of label, it's also a distributor. And we put out, we put out Joe, then Move. Sorry, Joe, Find Out Why, Move. And this is before we did the deal with Muse. And it's like, yeah, we want to put all your tracks together with B-sides, and we want to put it out around Europe, as a taster, just so people know who you are. So me and Graham, we got as far as doing the artwork, and I suddenly said, Graham, I said, Christ, they're actually going to package this as a debut album, aren't they? They're just not telling us. So we pulled it, and they were. And this is what I'm saying. Like, Graham is very good at business. I'm not saying he isn't, but I'm saying I'm quite cynical, really. And I thought that they were trying to package this as a debut album. And this is you only see bands, however musically good they are, or whatever, or how lucky they are, or how unlucky they are. You have to understand that people will put you through a sausage machine if you're not careful, if you're not the right, if you're going to do a debut album, you want to get a record deal, you want to get a publishing deal. You don't want someone to shit it out because it's easy for them to make a quick 60 grand out of it. So you have to be quite, that when it was about physical products, you had to be quite clever, really. And luckily, the combination of different skills that we had between Clint, who's a brilliant artist, very charismatic, very good business person, Graham, who's a really very good business person, very smart, great songwriter, Craig, who he's just a kid but had a very encyclopedic knowledge of music, and Martin, who's clever in a different ways to work at our price, when they banned people from playing acid house music, because they thought it might encourage people to take drugs, but it was a combination of very different people who've had different experiences, very smart, different ages. Really, Clint was too old, really. at that time, he was the wrong side of 30 when we were doing that, and Craig was 17. Just the age difference and the knowledge of music in that band was panoramic, really.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak about when you joined the band. You mentioned they were already quite successful. So with somebody new, like as you were somebody new coming into the band, were you nervous about like how the fans would receive you?
No, I don't. I mean, look, we all care about what people think about us, but when I got on stage, I don't really give a shit what anyone thinks about me, really, to be honest, you know. And the thing is that that's a gift, really, because some people won't like what you do. Be a good front person. I'm not talking about me. Generally speaking, to be a good front person, you need to have 2 or 3 different separate qualities. It's good if you can sing well. It's good if you're right looking. It's good if you can project passion. And if you can't do any of those good things, it's good if you can project the threat of violence. As long as you can do one of those things, you can be a good front person. You know, like I get on stage, I'm a completely different person on stage. I'm off stage, you know. So and always have been. So, you know, I mean, I think we were really, you know, band were great, but I think the band became more of a pop thing when I was in it. And I think I'm a great communicator. I'm great at communicating with audiences, you know, and know what to say, know the patter, and I know how to feel the emotion of an audience. Yeah, unfortunately, this might sound erroneous, and I'm going to say this, I think it's going to make you look shocked or make you look smile. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but unfortunately, an understanding of crowds and how to kind of manipulate them and how to talk to them as if they're like a small child and they're all one person is what Adolf Hitler was really good at doing. It's the same projection, unfortunately, that he used. You know, it's an understanding of how to communicate to people en masse. With, you know, because my mum's family were preachers, my dad's family were preachers, so it's just the same old shit that was going on 150 years ago. You know, it's, you know, one of my forefathers used to go around preaching, and he kept you know, he kept like a diary, and it'd say like, you know, turned up in Blackburn today, you know, stingy bastards. They only gave me like quid, you know. So, you know, so it's what my family did 2 or 3 generations before, was going around talking to people, singing, and sort of controlling people. Really, it's you through language or through humor or through singing. So, you know, I think we became something bigger and more poppy and more different. I think. I don't think. I think the band was more rare than people thought it was. The press for Stone Roses, who were a larger, more iconic and better band, they preferred Happy Mondays because it was sort of more raucous. But I think there was still something quite special about Inspiral Carpets that people didn't really get. I don't think the press got it, and I think a lot of the time they just tried to turn us into also rans, and I don't think that we were. I think we were very different. I think very special. I think, and I think the love of the music, and I think we've seems like as being underdogs. There's a lot of people out there who are Inspiral Carpets fans, and they're not, you know, they like the Stone Roses and they like Happy Mondays and they like the Charlatans, but they've got a special place in the heart for Inspiral Carpets, you know. And there's no other band I would have wanted to be in out of that scene, before or after. Even the bands that came out afterwards, Oasis or anything, I would not. I would definitely have wanted to be in Inspiral Carpets out of all those bands, because it was very special. People who were very special, and I don't think it was given the value. I don't think it was valued, and it was valued by the fans in the way it was, but it wasn't valued by the press in the way that it maybe should have been. Very classic sort of English band made up of really disparate, different people. You know, you know, like all those things you get in Britain that are really good, like a really good sitcom, you know, or Carry On film, you know, or James Bond film. It's all just completely disparate people thrown together in something that's an ensemble that makes it, you know, special, different, maddening, sometimes irritating, but there's still that special quality that comes from it.
Is that what you feel within a band? Like, the people that like you couldn't have done it if, say, Clint was somebody else, it wouldn't have worked as well as it did. Or if another singer had come in, it wouldn't have worked as well as it did.
So it might have been more successful, but I mean, Clint, I think, was always a star of that band. I think, you know, I never really had any issue with that. I think he's very charismatic, you know. He was always a star of that band. I didn't have a problem with that. But, you know, it's like I don't have a problem with it.
Oh no, I mean musically, like, do you think if somebody had been replaced, it wouldn't have worked like it did in that peak of Inspiral Carpets?
Yeah, because I think part of it is like being in a band is fighting and competing, and that's where it all comes from. That dynamism. No one wants to be Dire Straits, do they? Like I hate to be sort of critical, and I may be proven wrong. This will get me into trouble with your podcast, but I think with Oasis, every time it wasn't their fault. It's just attrition. Every time they shed an original band member, the band got less interesting. You know, the first album, which is just so brilliant, but it's great. You know, and I'm not denigrating anyone in the band. The first album's really great because the drumming is sort of quite rudimentary, and maybe some of the bass guitars are a bit rudimentary. It's just foregrounded the vocals and guitar, and that's why it was so great. So every time you replace an original band member with someone who's maybe, maybe in terms of learning a more accomplished player, I get less interested in it. I'm not convinced I really like any. I don't like anything that they did after they changed their drummer as much as the stuff they did and their original drummer. You know, that's not the band. It's just an observation. So I think that was, obviously it went on to great success and good on them. But to me, I kind of like Tony Carroll as a drummer. I thought it was more left space for the vocals and the guitar to express themselves, because that's what was foregrounded in that band, on the early recordings, was the vocals and the guitar. So the other instrumentation allowed that to happen. And we start having people who are like great jazz players playing on it. I think I don't know why I'm talking about Oasis, but not to be unfair, because they've had some fantastic people playing in them, and some of them I know a bit, but I think Zach Starkey is the only person who actually improved that band after only the original people left.
Yeah,
complex.
Yeah, when they got rid of Tony McCarroll, that definitely made the album like my favourite Oasis album. And then they brought in Alan White for, I think he was there for Morning Glory and Be Here Now. And that was sort of the peak of Oasis. But then once, like you say, the guitarist, the bass player go, it's not the same band, is it?
Well, maybe Chris Sharrock has played with him. He's a fantastic drummer. I'm not an expert on Oasis. I'm just saying one person I think who joined them who kind of just suddenly banged, like Zach Starkey, just had to go off and play with the Who or something. So he couldn't stay there in that seat. And I'm just talking about dynamics in bands. I'm not an expert. I'm not saying I'm right. It's only my opinion. So if anyone doesn't agree with me, please don't get upset about it. I'm not the whole lifetime of upsetting people both deliberately and unwittingly. I'm not trying to. In this instance.
Speaking of dynamics of a band, pretty much all of you wrote the songs. Was the pros and cons to that?
I think all singers are songwriters anyway, because I think all singers are songwriters because, for example, like Clint came up with the idea for Saturn V, and it goes like, "Lady, take a ride on the 664. Jerry wants to be a rocket." There's a popular misconception. I haven't seen anything yet. Laying out the lifeless corpse of President 35. The woman sitting by his side is the most beautiful woman alive. I don't think he wrote that. I think I wrote that. Because he used to listen to Dr. Feelgood. It's what they do. So, did he write that, or was it written, or do we all contribute? On the early song, stuff like Move, earlier songs I took part in, like Move and This Is How It Feels, I'm a very confident singer, and I would go straight into the second verse immediately after the chorus. There's a complex reason for that, which is going to sound insulting to the band, and it isn't. I believe very much in getting the vocals right back at the beginning of the first bar after the chorus into the verse, because if you wanted to be more successful and you wanted to have a bigger following and you wanted to introduce a bit more pop into the way that those songs are written, whoever wrote them originally, you couldn't assume that the people who knew less about the band would sustain their interest from a chorus back into a verse, and the first verse and the second verse. That is songwriting. That is, you know, Frank Sinatra used to sing songs that were written by George Harrison and say they were written by Lennon and McCartney. He knew they weren't written by Lennon and McCartney. It was a joke he was saying. He's reinterpreting the song. So he can say who the hell he wants to say wrote it. So I think songwriting is complicated. What I've just said is a dead technical thing. I'm not saying Spirals weren't great before I was in them, but I don't think the vocals always came straight in after the first verse. And that's because I just thought, if you want to be successful, you have to make it easier for the listener. And that listener isn't going to necessarily be into the Seeds. That listener isn't necessarily going to be into the 34 elevators or a chocolate watch band or you know, Sir Barrett or whatever. So I thought, yeah, we have to make it a little bit poppier, and that's why the vocal goes straight back in after the chorus, because you're just evening up the odds that you might be able to buy a car as a result of it eventually. But obviously, don't tell anyone any of that. But, no, but you know what I'm saying? That is song.
Yeah.
It came up with a song.
What
You
did
can't
you
call
say?
it So
Broke
Sad.
up.
He wrote a song called So This Is How It Feels. You know, I said you can't call it that. First off, the lyrics too long. Secondly, there's a song in the South Pacific called So This Is How It Feels. If you call the song So This Is How It Feels, they'll get all the publishing from it. So you'll have to lose. You'll have to lose the first letter. You have to lose the first word of it. Because if you write a song called My Way, you probably won't get paid publishing for it. So you have to, things like this, they're just tiny little things, but they could make the difference between the career that we had or the career that the last had, you know. The tiny little incremental things, and everyone in the band was clever, you know. I mean, at that time, my ex-wife, Alison, made clothes and was very successful. And our first office was, we just fenced off a little bit of her workroom and we had that as an office. And I was very keen to get doing merchandise because I'd worked for Alison, helped to run a clothing business that was fairly well known. You know, the made clothes, clubwear that people wore in the Hacienda and all over Britain. You know, it's called Bayless and Knight. And if you look at John Savage's favourite book of pop, she gets a mention. I don't, and fair enough. Alison Knight, you know. But so like I was very into the idea of doing merchandise. My idea to put merchandise sheets in the records because I'm good at business. I am good at business because I've been playing music for 37 years and I'm still doing it. And you know, and that's because you're good at business, you know. And you know, so anyway, I think I'm going off on a tangent. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm enjoying it. But I wanted to talk about, you mentioned Noel Gallagher went in for the audition before you, and obviously didn't get the role, but he was roadie for Inspiral Carpets. What was he like?
He's very canny, Noel. I mean, he was everything that I wasn't. He was working class Northern, you know. And the trouble with Noel is they didn't tell me this. There was a conspiracy of silence about the fact they'd auditioned to be in the band. It meant that sometimes along his 3.5 year career of working with us, going around the world, he wasn't necessarily that nice to me, which I don't. And he went off to be a million times more successful than we were, and he's always a very canny, sensitive, obviously brilliant songwriter, as it turned out. But you know, looking back on it, I don't think that was a very smart move by the band. If he'd auditioned to sing in the band and got in, I think they probably should have told me that, because I don't think that's very wise. I don't think.
Yeah,
yeah, just because I mean, you know, he went off and became so much more successful than we were. But you know, I think I mean, him being rejected by being in the band was great for him because he created that. It formulated his sort of creativity through anger and frustration to get into where he wanted to get. So I think probably was like a catalyst. I'm not saying we were responsible for Noel Gallagher's success. So I'm upsetting people in this interview. Sometimes I upset people it's deliberate and sometimes it's not intended. I'm just saying. I have had some funny things. I've read some stuff. I don't do it very often, but I've read some things on Oasis bulletin boards that were saying I'm like really bitter about Noel, this, that, and the other. And like half these people weren't even born. But it still happens. So like they might be right, they might be wrong, but the one thing is they definitely weren't there, you know. And what I would say about Noel was he was very funny, you know, but no one made him stand on the side of the stage at 350 gigs and watch me sing. you know. So, you know,
Did he ever show an interest of wanting to be in a band after that audition, like when you were touring with him and stuff?
he played with various different people. I mean, eventually he joined his brother's band, you know, and they used to near us in the boardwalk. They could only play 3 songs. They could play one by U2. They could play a house song that went da 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 da. I wanted you to know. I've never been able to find out what this house song is. And they could play Saturn 5. Those are the 3 songs that they started playing when Noel joined them. Obviously, they played songs before then, but that was probably, that would have been like 92 or something. And then eventually Noel, he couldn't work with us anymore because he was doing gigs with the band, you know. Yeah, so it was a bit cheap by jail for a while, you know.
Did he leave particular path or he got kicked, like sacked?
Say that again.
Did he get sacked or did he leave because of Oasis?
I don't want to be too negative about Noel because what'll happen is you'll put it out and then I'll just get a load of grief off people who weren't born. Will tell me that it didn't happen. But basically, what happened with Noel is that obviously he's such a creative, amazing person, and I'm not saying he isn't. But in the same way, at the particular time when he worked for us, certainly initially anyway, as you have a filter on a cigarette and it kind of takes the carbon monoxide out and other things, he's basically our drug filter. So he just took all the drugs that was being given to us. So he's like, that was kind of what happens. He did a load of drugs. And one of the things I would say about Noel, and again, I'd say it's I'm blue in the face. I'm not being nasty. I think one of the things that's slightly sad about Noel is, I mean, they were just the biggest band in Britain for 40 years, amazing and fantastic. I doubt he remembers very much of it. And that's the problem with just doing a load of drugs, is you don't remember stuff. And that's, I'm not being funny, not being nasty, I'm not mocking, I'm just saying that he probably doesn't remember a lot of it, you know. And then he kind of cleaned up, didn't he? And kind of realised that he got all of his life, which is always really impressive, you know. But he, you know, we never really did that many Class A's really in spirals, you know. And he saw bands he did, and they suffered as a result of it, you know. Suffered terribly badly, you know, as a result of it. And you know, for me, music is the drug, you know. You know, like, I'm not talking about Noel, I'm talking about other bands. There's some bands over the last 30 years, 40 years. I'm not talking about Oasis, you know, where they have a great reputation for taking drugs. It's just, to me, like, if you can't be transformative on stage just without drinking, without taking drugs, I don't think you should be doing it, really. You should be able to transform people and move people by what you do. And I don't mean like being dead arty or dead skilled. You know, it could be a punk band. There's those straight-laced punk bands who lift people out of what they're doing. I think that's a bad line to go. That's a bad line to go down. I think start relying on drugs to be a shaman, or be drugs to actually change the way people feel. I think that's dodge. I think you should be able to do it through the strength of your performance, I think.
Well, what was that for you personally? What was it like in '89 in the early '90s when Inspirals were at their peak?
Fantastic. Right, you know, I mean, it was great. I mean, I used to pretend I was on top of the pops when I was a little kid. I used to mime, you know, with a toilet roll or something, airbrush. I used to watch Tyrannosaurus Rex before they were T-Rex, or whatever wanted to be in the band. And I felt I knew what it would take to do it. And I love this idea of singers on the telly, because they didn't work, did they? Just hold a microphone. Half the time they weren't even actually singing, you know. They were kind of projecting like gods. Like, and I knew exactly how to do that. And I never really doubted that I would be on top of the pops when I was a kid. But one of the things that would lead you to be on top of the pops is completely avoiding any traditional career structure. If you want to be on top of the pops, it's probably best not to become a policeman, you know. If you want to get on top of the pops, it's probably best not to work on the North Sea oil rig, you know. If you want to be on top of the pops, it's probably not that it's a problem if you do. It's probably important not to have 5 kids before you're 20 years old. Not that it's a problem if you do. So, like, one of the things that would get you into music or something artistic is to vehemently refuse any formal career structure of any kind. I'm describing it in a very formal way, like someone running the Soviet Union or something, you know. But you have to really avoid things that have a strict career structure, because that's going to get in the way of you doing Top of the Pops. You know what I'm saying? You have to understand that when you're 16. You have to understand that already when you're 16. You know,
yeah.
you've got to understand that.
Well, we just spoke about the peak of the Spirals, but that scene sort of fizzled out. When you were in it and it were peaking, did you think it was going to last forever? Or
no, Peter said to me, "Don't buy into it all." He said, "It'll all pass." And that was a very kind thing for someone to do. It was a funny bit actually when we played at Reading Festival. When my dad, I got an industry card to put my mum and dad up in to take them to Reading Festival, and they watched us headline Saturday night there. And when he was young, he went around Germany and Austria just when he was 19, just before the outbreak of the Second World War. In fact, he only got out of Austria maybe the day before the Second World War broke out. He was very lucky to get out, actually. But he'd been around there, and he watched us on stage. And when it came off, I said, "What did you think of the concert, Dad?" And he gave me the most bizarre review that anyone ever could, but in a way it did encompass the idea that it was all slightly not to buy into it too much. He said, "The last time I saw an audience reacting like that was when I saw Mussolini giving a speech in Rome in 1930." So there was an element of the ridiculous while it was going on, which went. I don't think anyone in the band actually gave themselves over too much and became too caught up in it at its height. We had our moments, you know, sure, but it never got too Mariah Carey-ish, if you know what I'm saying. There's always a sense of humour and sort of, I mean, in quite humorous and quite harsh put downs. You're getting too special, which is fair enough. I think it's always good to keep a bit of reality in the troops, isn't it?
Yeah, like we say that the scene fizzled out. So did the band in were it 95 the band split?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably Graham and Clint wanted to knock it on the head, and I think I wanted to keep it going, and maybe that wasn't realistic at the time. But you know, it's hard to let go of the circus when you've run away to it. The other thing, I can speak for myself personally. It might sound like a little thing, and I'm just talking about myself. I moved 180 miles up from where I'd lived. I didn't have any family structure up in Manchester. I mean, I had a family structure that I'd created children. I had a wife who, a couple of years later, we separated, you know, got divorced. But it's quite tough living somewhere that you're not from. You know, I think it's tougher to live somewhere you're not from, not because of the place, however welcoming or whatever opportunities the place offers you or gives you, you're still not where your family structure are, where you grew up, and it's not a trauma. But you know, when it's suddenly the band's gone, and you know there was later on in the 80s there was the Manchester bomb, and my ex-wife, she made clothes, and I remember I was in town on the day that it went off. We were demoing with a band. We go to Liverpool to demo for Polydor, I think it was. And the bomb went off, and I went back into town 2 days later on a bus. And I saw all the devastation. And it must have been delayed shock to just burst into tears on the bus, because I just saw all the people who were going to lose their jobs and whose lives were going to be turned upside down. And lo and behold, by 1999, a couple of years later, my ex-wife's business had gone bust. And I had to go and work in a catalogue company, you know, for 140. Well, I'm not complaining about it, because loads of people do work. I'm not too good to do any work that anyone else does. I'm not put myself above anyone else. But I went and worked in a catalogue company for 2 years and chain smoked, worked there. For about a week, loads of people worked out who I was. And I was saying I had airs and graces, which I didn't. Completely untrue. Just got on with it. And, you know, so it was quite, you know, but there's, you know, what I would say about this, though, is I didn't have airs and graces. I just got on with it. And I'm going to say something in praise of myself. There's plenty of people who've been in bands who just would have taken a load of smack and killed themselves, to be honest. If you've been in that situation, that might sound a bit vainglorious, but I think it's actually true. I just got on with it. And so we could pay the mortgage and stay where we were living. We just had to do. Didn't have any choice. It had to be done. We had little kids. You had to do it. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Sound ridiculous, but I think in music it's quite easy to fall down the cracks of a pavement. You know, it is. If You know, if you, you know, to go in somewhere and go work in a catalogue company, to have people slightly taking the piss out of you because they're telling you that you think you're better than them when you don't. I didn't think I was better than anyone at all. At no point in any of this process did I ever think I was better than anyone else. And I had no, there was no pride that would stop me going working in a catalogue company to earn £140 a week to pay the mortgage. I did slightly resent, I don't know whether it was Red Nose Day or Children in Need, like the company that owned JD Williams was the AM Brown Group, and they turned over like 1.4 billion, well, £1.5 billion a year, but they expected you to get your hands in your pocket to pay some big corporate cocksuckers, some fake charity bollocks. And I know that's probably going to be really offensive to some people. You know, either Children in Need or Red Nose Day is run by Freud's, which is a Conservative Party PR company. I wouldn't give any money to them. Wouldn't give any money to them. No, nothing would make me give money to them, whatever they say it's for, allegedly. So, you know, I resented them expecting us, you know, this bloody company that could have given 100 grand to these charities, expected the poor bastards who are working on the phones to get their money out and give it to some corporate cocksuckers. You know, that does not go down well with me.
I don't want to like get into all that, but them charities have been going for years and years and years, and it never seems to go any like.
You know what Bert Albrecht said? He said, "Why rob a bank when you can set one up?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When did the band get back together for the reunion?
Got back together in 2003, but it took me about 6 months to decide whether I actually wanted to do it.
Was
Because,
it?
because when the band stopped and I'm not blaming anyone, it's all water under the bridge. When the band ended in '95, I had 3 kids under the age of 3. I had twins. You know, it was a difficult time for me. You know, for my own personal agenda, it's
Yeah.
difficult to be unemployed when you've got 3 kids under the age of 3, and you know. But you know, that was my problem, their problem. You know, so like it's difficult to put your head back in the lion's jaw, so to speak. You know, and also you're kind of getting back and you're kind of playing gigs. It's not like setting the whole thing up again. There's very few bands who are like Shed 7 where they've gone forward and done new stuff and it's been successful on that kind of level. There's very few bands who've done that, really. So obviously it was lovely doing it. It's great fun.
You left the band in 2011. Do you regret how it all ended?
Can't really talk about that, and I can't really explain why I can't talk about it right here, right now. Sorry, I can't talk about it. I can't explain why I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it.
No, I understand. I understand.
I mean, apart from one thing, you know, I did an interview in Uncut recently about when, and this isn't Inspiral Carpets' fault. I did an interview with Uncut magazine recently about doing "I Want You" with Marky Smith, and sub-editor went in and made out I was still in the band, nothing to do with Inspiral Carpets. So you just can't talk about some of these things because it's too that Uncut magazine. You'd think I was still in the band, which was done by a sub-editor at Uncut, which was completely entirely deliberate. It's nothing to do with Inspiral Carpets, but there's things you can't control when you do interviews, and I knew that would happen when I did the interview. It's just
Really?
I don't. Do you know much about journalism?
No, this is just something I started. I don't really know about
Yeah, I
gender.
mean, like for example, if you look at Corbyn, right? Corbyn. Sorry, I would say that, and we got a big quick. You're not going to do this. It's just the way things then go through when things get quote redacted and changed. Like Corbyn, they said to him about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Said there's anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and what Corbyn actually said was, yes, there's anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. He said there's also anti-Semitism in all of society. There's also anti-Semitism in every other political party. So when you foreground the fact there's anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, I think you're overestimating the importance of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party versus anti-Semitism in society, specifically in general in every other political party. So what the journalists then did was they misquoted him and said that he said it was overstressed that there was anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. And this same phrase got said by Louise Berger, who was a Labour MP, who was also writing a column either for the Times or the Daily Telegraph, and it got repeated endlessly on the BBC. It's not what he fucking said. So this goes on in journalism all the time. What you say, they subtly re-engineer it to say something that you never said. And they then try and get you to apologise for saying the thing. So, and this goes on in journalism all the time. So that doesn't have much relevance in the question you asked, but there's reasons I can't go into what I can't talk about.
No, I get what you're saying. Like, you take the words out of your mouth, kind of thing, and twist it and stuff. Yeah.
No, I'm not saying I want to twist it. I just can't talk about it. So I never agreed to talk about it when we set up the Instagram. I can't. I think probably the fact they can't talk about it in its own way is probably me talking about it. But you know what I'm saying. Anyway, carry on.
No, then you had a solo career. I just wanted to say that your debut album, I think, is better than any Spirals album. What was that?
Oh God, I don't know what the sub editor would do with that. Yeah, well, thank you. I think it was Keep It Untidy. I had a few tracks on it that I'd written to do with Inspiral Carpets, The Light of Day. I mean, I'm working. I mean, my new record, which I think you'll also like, and I'm not just saying that to push the record. There is a reference. There's a reason why I'm saying that. I've actually done that on vinyl as like a very limited edition number of vinyl copies, which you can buy on Bandcamp at the moment, which they won't be for very long. And I'm going to work through some of the older catalogue that I did. And thank you for the praise, by the way. There's I'm going to do the vinyl edition of Keep It Untidy with the original track listing on it. But again, there's only going to be a couple of hundred of them, so they'll all go. And when they've gone, I'm not going to do any more of them. But I think I did a song called Leaving It All Behind. I think that's a really good song. That was on an album called Sound. So, I mean, I'm not massive as a solo artist. I'm not going to self-aggrandize myself. And if I wanted to be more successful, I could be more structured in the way that I do it. But I just love playing music, and I do too many gigs. I mean, I think I've come to the end of that. I'm trying to be a bit more selective over doing gigs, and I'm even looking at the point. It's not exactly David Bowie saying it's not only the end of this tour. It's also it's not that. But I mean, I'm 60 next year, and I don't intend. I've worked since. I mean, when I say I've worked, not being like a nurse or a miner or someone. Some people wouldn't see it as being work, but I don't intend to work until I drop. And unfortunately, my brother's died last year. My eldest brother Peter, and there's a reason why I was talking about Peter. I have to be quick. How he wants to speak. Peter, we knew he was dying of cancer, and so emotionally, in the grief of that, not waiting for it to happen, but knowing it was going to happen, was a bit like being in a boxing ring, like Muhammad Ali. And he actually died in August of last year, but completely unexpectedly, my brother Andrew, who was 62, he died in June of a stroke. So it's like you kind of dive around this boxing ring emotionally trying to stay out of the way of Muhammad Ali, and then George Foreman comes up and smacks you in the face from the other side of the boxing ring. It's like, Christ, I've got to deal with that now. When his family have to deal with that now. Peter has to deal with that. So I don't intend, I'm going to retire, I think, when I'm 66. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to get a dog and do something else, because I'm not here to entertain other people if I survive to that point. And so, occasionally people ring me up and want me to do a gig, I might do it. But so I'm looking towards the end of what I'm doing, I think, now. And I think maybe the need to entertain people all the time is not an entirely healthy one, maybe. I think sometimes you've got to live for yourself, haven't you? It's not all about showing off or boasting, It'd be nice to have a dog. It'd be nice not to have a phone. I mean, maybe I'd get bored after 5 minutes, but it'd be nice not to have a phone, not to have email, not to have any social media, have a dog, and not work. We're not made to work. I mean, I think human beings, when they were like living in caves, whatever, probably very few of them ever lived beyond the age of 35. It's why we're already fucked when we're 40, because we weren't actually designed to live. I don't know. That's me guessing. But was there another question you had? Sorry. And thanks for the praise. It's a good record. So you have to make sure you get that on vinyl.
Yeah, no, I definitely will, because I do really like it. I do like the album. No, that was it, really. I was going to ask what you had planned for the future, what you've just said.
Well, the reason I said that my brother Peter died was that we were working on a record together, and he died after we'd done 3 tracks. So I'm doing a record so I'm working on. I've been working on a record posthumously of him. It's called Secret Gardens, Secret Garden, and it's like about 9 tracks that he recorded on a little digital recorder that does Cubase. I've been working on it with this producer guy down in Windsor, and it's a lo-fi record. It's sort of a bit like, I mean, there's some deep stuff on it, but it's a bit like John Shuttleworth, or a bit like sort of Damon Gough or something. I mean, it's a very obscure, eccentric, bizarre, very English album. He played guitar, he played like bossa nova guitar, he's got a good guitarist, but it's quite lo-fi. But there's some really funny songs on it. I mean, some very deep and very sad songs. There's some songs about him contemplating the fact that he was dying. But there's some really funny songs on it. There's one song on it called Get Up and Grovel, about going to work when you don't want to go to work, which is, I think it's absolutely brilliant. So maybe Christmas time or next year that will be out. We did a crowdfunder for it, and we'll just finish off mixing it next week. Next week, I'm spending 2 days in Windsor mixing it with this guy called Denny. He's really amazing. And then we're off to Glastonbury. So that's going to be quite a week.
It's I'm sorry about your losses, but it's nice that you're carrying on his legacy through that album.
It's a veneration of him. None of us would have played music. I've been driving up and down the motorways doing gigs, listening to this album, and I found it a tremendous sort of comfort. And like, there's one track where he's sort of playing instrumental, sort of Spanish instrumental thing. You can hear his breathing on it. I find that very comforting, you know. And the record, it's a lo-fi record. It's very, sort of almost say barretish. It's got beats on it. We didn't try and make it all vanilla-y songs that were slightly disturbing. We made them more disturbing. We didn't try and make it, you know, like that was an Amy Winehouse film, and but all the women that looked like Amy Winehouse were saying that tattoos didn't look rough enough, and that's no good. You've got to be true to what the art is. And I've learned a lot about it. You know, he's a great lyricist. Some great songs on there that I could never have written, both melodically and lyrically. To look out for that.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a listen. Yeah, well, thank you for your time, Tom. I know you're a busy guy, so I really do appreciate that.
Maybe I'll try and send you a link to the album. I don't know. We're putting this out very soon.
It should be out tomorrow, but yeah, I'll have a listen. Why would you like me to play it at some point?
I don't think you can. We haven't got a form that we can play it in, but maybe later on when it's come out, put it on something.
All right, yeah, I'll give it a listen though. And once it's out, share it.
Sorry, I can talk about everything. It's a bad time to talk about that. A lot of things going on. But thanks very much.
But on a while, sing that song for me. Beautiful symphony ringing round in my head. But on a while, you belong with me. Beautiful empathy ringing round in my bed. Making it real, making me feel like tomorrow would never come. So come and bang on my drum, 'cause the very moment you are the world. But on a while, always be there for me. Part of my destiny, angels fear to tread. But on a while, follow me. Part of a history of a love that was shared. Just for a while, you made me smile. This was an endless day. You never fly away, never have to search my heart.